Am I the asshole for calling my friend creepy after he admitted he showered with his sister until he was 18? I genuinely did not expect a casual conversation about crushes to end with one of my friends admitting he showered naked with his sister until he was 18. And honestly, I still can't tell whether I'm the crazy one for reacting strongly to it, or whether everyone else was just trying too hard to avoid conflict. The whole thing happened during what should have been a completely normal hangout. There are 4 of us in this friend group. We've all known each other for a couple years now, mostly through mutual friends from college. 3 of us became close naturally over time, while the 4th guy, Marcus, originally joined because he was already friends with one of the others. We're all around 23 or 24. The kind of age where everyone is technically adults but still figuring themselves out. Some of us have careers already. Some are still drifting. Some are dating seriously. Some are still acting like college never ended. Normal mid-20s chaos. Marcus has always been different. Not in a bad way exactly, just unusual. He's very smart, pretty quiet most of the time, and honestly kind of socially disconnected in a way that makes it hard to tell whether he's joking or completely serious. He also talks about his younger sister constantly. And when I say constantly, I mean constantly. At first, I thought it was sweet. He clearly loved his family. There's nothing wrong with that. But over time, I started noticing their relationship felt unusually intense. They text constantly. They apparently spend huge amounts of time together. He brings her up in nearly every conversation. He compares other people to her. He talks about how she's his best friend. Again, none of that is automatically wrong. Families are different. Some siblings are closer than others. I tried not to judge it. Still, sometimes the dynamic made me vaguely uncomfortable in a way I couldn't fully explain. Not because I thought something inappropriate was happening, more because they seemed to have almost no boundaries whatsoever. But honestly, I kept those thoughts to myself because I figured maybe I just grew up differently. Then, yesterday happened. We were all hanging out at one of our apartments, just talking about random stuff. At some point, the conversation shifted toward relationships and attraction. One of the guys admitted he had a crush on another friend's older sister. That immediately turned into everyone teasing him. The friend whose sister got mentioned started dramatically complaining about how horrifying the idea was. He kept saying things like, "Dude, that's disgusting," and "I don't even want to imagine my sister dating any of you idiots." Then he joked that he was permanently traumatized after accidentally walking in on his sister changing once when they were younger. Honestly, it was normal friend group conversation. Immature, stupid, harmless. Then Marcus suddenly interrupted and said, "I don't get why people act like seeing your sibling naked is such a huge deal." The room got quiet immediately. Not dead silent, but that kind of subtle silence where everyone pauses because something suddenly feels weird. Then he casually added, "I've seen my sister naked tons of times." I remember genuinely thinking he was joking, because what else are you supposed to think when a grown man says something like that so casually? But then nobody laughed, including him. And slowly, all of us started realizing he was completely serious. One of the guys awkwardly asked, "Wait, what?" And Marcus, still acting totally normal, explained that growing up, his family only had one shower, so he and his sister would shower together to save time. At first, I immediately relaxed because I assumed he meant when they were little kids, which honestly isn't unusual. Lots of families bathe siblings together when they're toddlers. But then someone asked, "Like, when you were little?" And Marcus shrugged and said, "Yeah, and later too. We mostly stopped after I graduated high school." I swear the entire room froze for a second, because suddenly everyone was mentally doing the math. High school, meaning he was around 18, meaning his sister was around 16, and apparently they were still showering together naked. At first, nobody really knew how to respond. There was this weird, uncomfortable tension where everyone was trying to process what they'd just heard without immediately turning the conversation into a disaster. One guy nervously laughed. Another just stared at the floor. Meanwhile, Marcus seemed genuinely confused by our reactions, like he truly did not understand why everyone suddenly looked disturbed. He kept trying to explain it. According to him, it was completely normal in his family. They only had one bathroom. Mornings were busy. Showering together was faster. Nobody cared. Their parents knew. Everyone was comfortable. The more he explained, the worse it sounded. Because, honestly, if he had just said, "Yeah, it happened a couple times growing up," people probably would have awkwardly moved on. But he kept defending it, passionately, like we were unfairly attacking some completely innocent family tradition. At one point, he actually said, "You guys are the weird ones for sexualizing it." And honestly, that's where my patience started disappearing, because nobody had even made it sexual. We were reacting because most people naturally stop showering naked with opposite-sex siblings long before adulthood. That's just normal social boundaries. And the more defensive he became, the more uncomfortable everyone got. I finally said something like, "Dude, there's really no reason siblings need to keep showering together at that age." He immediately got defensive, so I continued. I pointed out that showers take like 10 minutes. Even if their household schedule was busy, there were a million alternatives. Wake up earlier, alternate shower times, shower at night, literally anything else. But instead, they apparently continued showering together into late adolescence. That's what felt weird to me. Not because siblings accidentally see each other changing sometimes. That happens. But because this sounded intentional, routine, and normalized. Marcus kept insisting it wasn't a big deal because they were comfortable. And honestly, that phrase bothered me almost as much as the actual situation. Because comfort alone doesn't automatically make something healthy. Lots of unhealthy family dynamics feel normal to the people inside them. That's how normalization works. But the thing that really pushed the conversation over the edge was when I said something about his sister probably following his lead. Because honestly, that's what I genuinely thought. He was the older sibling. Older siblings naturally shape boundaries, especially in close family environments. And I said that, maybe as the older brother, he should have recognized earlier that continuing to shower together into their teenage years wasn't appropriate. The second I used the word appropriate, his entire demeanor changed. Suddenly, he wasn't defensive anymore. He was angry, like genuinely angry. He started cursing at me, telling me I was disgusting for implying something creepy, telling me I was projecting weird thoughts onto his family, telling me I was immature. And honestly, maybe I could have handled it more gently. But at that point, I was genuinely disturbed. Because from my perspective, he was trying incredibly hard to normalize something that most people instinctively understand crosses basic social boundaries. Eventually, I flat out said, "I'm sorry, but that's creepy." And the second the word left my mouth, the entire atmosphere exploded. Marcus immediately stood up, started yelling, called me an asshole, then stormed out. The apartment went dead silent afterward. And honestly, I think all of us were kind of shocked by how quickly things escalated. For a while, nobody said anything. Then eventually, one of the guys quietly admitted, "Okay, yeah, that was definitely weird." The others agreed. Everyone thought the situation itself was bizarre. But apparently, they also thought I took things too far by directly calling him creepy to his face. One of them specifically said, "You probably should have just let it go." But honestly, I don't know if I could have. Because the more I sat there thinking about it, the more uncomfortable the whole thing became. Not just the showering itself, but how intensely he defended it. And I think that's what keeps bothering me. If somebody says something unusual and then later reflects and says, Okay, yeah, maybe that wasn't normal. That's one thing. But Marcus acted genuinely offended that anyone thought there should have been boundaries at all. That reaction honestly disturbed me more than the original confession. After he left, the group conversation became incredibly awkward. Nobody really knew what to do. Part of me felt guilty because I hate creating conflict in friend groups. But another part of me kept thinking, why am I expected to protect his feelings when he voluntarily admitted something that most people would obviously find alarming? And honestly, the more I replay the conversation, the stranger it becomes. Because Marcus genuinely did not seem embarrassed, not even slightly. If anything, he seemed confused that the rest of us reacted negatively. That's what makes me wonder whether his family normalized an environment that seriously blurred boundaries. Again, I'm not saying anything abusive happened. I want to make that very clear. I'm not accusing him of some secret criminal behavior. But I do think families can become emotionally enmeshed in unhealthy ways without realizing it. And this honestly felt like one of those situations. Afterward, I started thinking more about all the previous comments Marcus had made about his sister over the years. So, hearing someone casually describe that kind of family dynamic as completely normal honestly triggered an instinctive reaction in me. Maybe that's also why my friends think I was too harsh. Because to them, even if something feels unusual, directly calling a person creepy crosses a line. And maybe they're not entirely wrong. I've replayed the conversation in my head multiple times, wondering whether I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have just said, okay, that's definitely unusual, and left it there. Maybe I didn't need to push the conversation further. But honestly, Marcus also wouldn't let it go. Every time someone reacted awkwardly, he doubled down harder. He kept acting like we were irrational for finding the situation uncomfortable. At one point, he even implied modern society overthinks personal boundaries too much. And maybe there's some truth to that. But I still think most people naturally develop a stronger sense of privacy with family as they get older. Those boundaries exist for a reason. The whole conversation started making me deeply uncomfortable because Marcus seemed incapable of understanding why anyone might see the situation differently. It almost felt like he believed emotional closeness automatically erased the need for boundaries altogether. And honestly, that mindset worried me. Not because I think he's dangerous, but because people who grow up in households with very blurred boundaries sometimes struggle recognizing where healthy limits should exist later in life. After the argument, Marcus left the group chat entirely. Nobody has really heard from him since, and now the friend group feels tense. One guy thinks I should apologize just to smooth things over. Another said Marcus probably needed a reality check eventually. The rest seems stuck somewhere in the middle. Honestly, part of me feels bad. I don't enjoy humiliating people. And I imagine hearing a friend criticize something tied to your upbringing probably feels awful, especially if you genuinely believed it was normal. But another part of me still feels like pretending the situation wasn't strange would have been dishonest. I also keep thinking about his sister, because honestly, I wonder how she views all this now. Does she still think it was completely normal? Did either of them ever question the dynamic growing up? Or was it just so normalized inside their household that nobody really examined it? That's the thing about childhood environments. Whatever you grow up with often becomes your baseline for normal, even when outsiders immediately view it differently. And honestly, maybe that's why Marcus reacted with such intense anger. Because from his perspective, we weren't just criticizing one habit. We were indirectly criticizing his entire family dynamic. Still, I think there's a difference between understanding why someone became normalized to something and pretending the situation itself isn't unusual. And no matter how many times I replay the conversation, I still can't convince myself that those kinds of boundaries continuing that late into life feels normal to most people, especially because it wasn't framed as occasional necessity. It was framed more like preference and comfort. That's the detail that keeps sticking in my head. At the same time, I do recognize that calling someone creepy is harsh. That word carries weight, and maybe hearing it from a friend hit him harder than I intended. But honestly, I also think sometimes people say shocking things and then expect everyone else to quietly absorb the discomfort just to avoid hurting feelings. And I'm not very good at pretending something feels normal when it absolutely doesn't. So now I'm stuck wondering whether I crossed a line, or whether everyone else was simply too uncomfortable to say out loud what they were already thinking. Because, judging from everyone's faces in that room, I definitely wasn't the only person who found the whole thing unsettling. I was just the only one willing to actually say it.